Assalamu alaikum dear students, and welcome to the 68th session of the KIPS Distance Learning Program Current Affairs Newspaper Roundup session. I am your host Shahrukh Haider, and today we are going to look at the economic recovery of Pakistan post-coronavirus first wave and what are the reasons behind that and what kind of future prospects can we look at, including the wave of digitization that we are experiencing in Pakistan right now. So first things first, Pakistan's real GDP is expected to grow by 2 to 2.5% in the financial year 2020 to 2021, and visible growth is already being experienced in the agriculture sector, in industry, and to some extent in tourism as well. Now there are basically four reasons why we have seen a growth in Pakistan's economic indicators and why Pakistan's economy is recovering much better than most countries in the world, especially in the region. So first of all, the potential for export of rice and textile in November has dramatically increased due to the industrial package and the subsidy and support that the government gave to the industry during the first wave and national lockdowns, where we experienced the highest level of economic downturn or economic crisis due to the national lockdowns and the international stoppage of trade and commerce, right? The second reason is that there has been a significant increase in the collection of taxes by the federal government, by the Federal Bureau of Revenue, which has to some extent reduced the fiscal deficit, which is one of the greatest economic challenges for Pakistan, where Pakistan has not been able to collect more revenue than its expenditure in the last nearly 30 years. Thirdly, there is a constant and strong receipt of workers' remittances in these months, because as the first wave went down and receded in much of the world, especially in the Gulf, they invited the workers that were working in the Gulf region back, and work started, and Pakistan's labor in the Gulf region, in the broader Middle Eastern region, started resending remittances back to Pakistan. And right now Pakistan's remittances per year stand at $24 billion, which is historically high. And finally, the outlook for further narrowing down in the current account deficit seems possible because of two reasons. First of all, higher remittances, and secondly, more foreign exchange reserves, and which is why the current account deficit is going to reduce to 1.5 or even 1% of the GDP, which is one of the lowest that we've seen in the last 10 years. So these are the basic indicators and the reasons why the economy is improving. Obviously, this also points to the idea that one of the main reasons why Pakistan's export sector is performing much better is also because of the opening of the world's market and greater demand for Pakistani goods in the world. Now, why is Pakistan able to tap into this greater demand for its good is because many of its competitors are actually facing very deep economic crisis brought on by the COVID-19 pandemic, and are still under the throes of the pandemic, are unable to open up their export industries to the extent that is needed to fill the gap that is left behind due to their national lockdowns and COVID-19. So this gap, to some extent, at least Pakistan is trying to fill this gap, which is one of the main reasons why Pakistan's export sector is performing significantly better than all countries in the region and majority countries in the world as well. So further positive developments are also on the cards. So one of the things that might further improve Pakistan's export sector and Pakistan's domestic economic stability is that Pakistan might be able to procure COVID-19 vaccines early, because the federal government has already taken aside $100 to $150 million for the procurement of 100 million, or I think 150 million COVID-19 vaccines. And the first people to get the vaccine would be obviously the frontline healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, and the elderly, the people who are most vulnerable to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, reflecting the significantly better performance of Pakistan's economy and export sector in the world is Pakistan's export sector's comparison with the export sector of India and Bangladesh. So in the months of December, India recorded a historic 18% reduction in its export sector, whereas Bangladesh recorded 4% reduction. Whereas in the same month, Pakistan recorded 18% improvement in its export sector, which is substantially higher than India and Bangladesh. However, obviously, since India and Bangladesh respective export sectors are much bigger in volume than Pakistan, so that does not mean that Pakistan's export sector is bigger than either India or Bangladesh. It just means that in terms of proportion, it is performing better than India and Bangladesh's export sector in this time. However, historically, Bangladesh and India have been much better performing export countries than Pakistan has been. But the tide seems to have changed now. Now, in the same breath, we also need to see how the digital revolution in Pakistan, brought upon almost forcibly by the COVID-19 pandemic and the ensuing national lockdown, has also contributed to Pakistan's economy. So there are two major sectors in which digitization has taken root. First of all, it's the education, and second, it's the businesses. And if we compare these two sectors, it is quite clear that the business sector, the business community, has been much more successful in digitalization than the education sector. There are important reasons for that. Number one reason is that since the businesses have better resources to digitize, they their employees and the people who are involved in business sector are more prone and used to the technologies that are used in digital work, and they find it comparatively easy to work at home. And the work from home has really skyrocketed in Pakistan, and majority of companies are now shifting to a new model of work culture and work dynamics, where it is really up to the employees whether they want to opt for work from home option or whether they want to continue their work in their offices. This flexibility definitely brings higher productivity in employees and increases the overall efficiency and therefore the profits of companies. And this is especially true of the new and emerging entrepreneurial businesses, new digital businesses, IT sector businesses in Pakistan, which have really mushroomed in Pakistan, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, one of the main reasons why the businesses are better able to cope up with digitization than the education sector is also because the people involved in the business sector can basically learn the skills that are required for digital work with less difficulty and more efficiently than the people involved in education sector can. Historically, the education sector has been to some extent averse to technology, and they haven't really adopted technology at the rate that they should have adopted. But businesses have, because businesses need to survive. Education sector can survive without much innovation because the population of Pakistan is extremely high and the focus on education is increasingly becoming more clear. Moreover, various e-commerce startups have emerged in Pakistan, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, which have provided employment to a lot of people, and a new culture of freelancing has emerged in Pakistan, especially the university educated youth which have been unable to find any employment during the pandemic has turned to freelancing and finding work online, and this has substantially increased Pakistan's freelancing culture and increased Pakistan's share in the international IT services industry, and really brought Pakistan on the map of freelancing and IT services in the world. However, we are still way behind Bangladesh when it comes to freelancing and international and online IT services, but this is a very important step in the right direction. If I give you one good example of that is of the Food Panda, food app. So before the pandemic, the Food Panda wasn't a really big player in the food delivery, business sector. However, ever since the pandemic, they have really innovated and they have brought a lot of new products on their streamline, and they have really tried to include as many restaurants all around Pakistan as they could, and they have streamlined their delivery of services, their delivery of food, and improved overall their supply chain networks, and they have substantially increased their size as a company, their operations, and they have become really national in Pakistan. Moreover, one of the best things that they have come up with is the Ghar Ka Khana scheme, in which they have provided some capital and access to women who are stranded at home either due to traditional reasons because they are confined to the homes, or due to the COVID-19 pandemic, Food Panda has given them the opportunity to become entrepreneurs, to cook food and sell it on their platform and earn money as a good source of secondary income, especially during hard economic times due to the coronavirus pandemic. So this is a very good example of how businesses in Pakistan are adopting to digitization and how that is working for them. However, in the education sector, much work needs to be done because there is lack of access to technology, there is lack of access to a stable internet connection, there is a lack of skills among the students, especially among the teachers, the elder teachers especially, in using IT softwares, IT technologies, and there is a dearth of people who can innovate in education and digital education, especially in Pakistan. So I believe that the government needs to shift its focus to digital education because the benefits and the potential that digital education has for Pakistan is enormous. Because out of the nearly 40 million out of school children in Pakistan, majority do not attend school because they lack access to schools, public schools or private schools, or either they do not have the resources to attend school. So digital education can really overcome these two very big hurdles in pursuing education quite easily. So the potential is huge. Let's hope that the education sector in Pakistan learns a few things from the business sector in Pakistan, and the government brings its attention to the digital revolution that is required in the education sector for Pakistan. Thank you very much for being tuned in. Take care. Allah Hafiz.